Hi there. This is week number 61 of my Postdoc Chronicles, and today we're featuring the indie game Slay the Spire. But before we go into that, on my other Switch, I'm also playing this shmup game called Strikers 1945. So I that's because now I'm able to play the Switch vertically while on handheld, so it feels like the original Game Boy, because I recently got this accessory called the flip grip. So it's a Kickstarter. I did an unboxing of this one in my previous video if you want to check it out. But yeah, it's very cool so far. But anyway, the game that we showcase today is the indie game Slay the Spire. So my game time for this game is just around, I think, 3 or 4 hours. But man, I can see how it's very addicting. It reminds me of the Game Boy Advance games, Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories, where so basically it's a card-based game. So in Chain of Memories, you have a set of cards. When you attack an enemy, you use cards. But that game is just RPG, and then the card mechanics is not that deep. But man, this one went all in the card mechanics. It's not, you don't walk or anything like that. It's just you and the enemy and then your cards, and basically how it plays is, in the beginning of the game you have a randomized set of cards that in some modes you can set them up. But the nice thing is, the cards that you get are like randomized, and you basically have to make do with the cards that you have. And then the map is randomized, so you go from point A to point B, and then there's like a branching path. You basically pick a path, and during the combat itself, for example, if you pick a path that has an enemy in it, then you have a randomized set of enemies with randomized attacks and randomized skills. And the cool thing is, every turn you get to see what your enemies are gonna do. So for example, enemy in this next turn, enemy A is going to attack, enemy B is going to cast a healing spell, enemy C is going to debuff you. What are you gonna do? And you have a limited number of energies, and each card that you spend uses this energy. So in one turn you can like activate a single card, a strong one that uses a lot of your energies, or maybe you can activate the smaller cards with lesser skills but uses a smaller energy, so that per turn you can activate a lot of them. So it's really very nice, and I really like the random elements thrown into it, because sometimes if you constructed your cards in the first place and you already know what you have every time, the tendency becomes that every turn you do exactly the same thing. Here it's not, you get to adapt every turn. And also it's roguelike. Okay, so in other words, every run that you do, it's entirely different. So there are like so far there are three starting characters that I've seen so far, and they have like different passive skills. And yeah, it's really very nice. I can see myself playing this a lot of times. But yeah, that's like a Slay the Spire for the Nintendo Switch. So before we go to my Postdoc Chronicles, so typically when before I buy my lunch in the canteen here in the University of Witwatersrand, there's a place here called the Matrix. That's basically the canteen. There's like a bookshop there. I've bought some books there before on physics, but they have like a table outside where they sell bargain books, basically like garbage books, like books in other languages on some esoteric topics. The book for dummy ones, like Microsoft for Dummies or stuff like that. So usually I just pass by, and then I usually don't buy anything from that bin, because most of the books are like disposable. But just today, when I bought my lunch, I was surprised when I passed by there and then I had a quick glance. I saw some sci-fi books. I'm like, wow, I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, if you don't know. And yeah, I just got, I had to look at them, and I saw some short fiction anthologies. And man, I don't say no to short fiction, even though I told myself that while in South Africa I shouldn't buy books, or if I should like restrict myself. But man, these are like very cheap ones, like around less than like 80 pesos per book, and they're really like the old science fiction anthology ones, so which are really nice. And there's still a lot of there like in the novel form. But me personally, I think the perfect form for science fiction is the short story, because you only get to tweak a specific scientific scenario, or tweak a science law, and then get to expand on what are the consequences of this. Or for example, you can set up a setting where, what if there's a planet that's always nighttime, or what if like the roads move or something like that. So you can tweak something very little. What if everyone is literally equal, and then get to go from there. So it's very opposite to fantasy. For example, I believe fantasy don't work that well. There are of course fantasy short stories that are good, but I think fantasy is meant for the long form novels or series and such, because you need to like build the world, you need to build the setting, you need to explain the rule set of the magic that you're introducing. For example, you need to like explain the different areas of your big world and stuff. In sci-fi, like you only if you're doing it in the short fiction, you only tweak a little of the laws of nature that we know, and then you get to go from there. Again, for me personally, I think the perfect form for science fiction is the short story. But anyway, speaking of the loots that I got, the books that I got here, they are in a black plastic bag. I paid for all of these one, two, three, four, six books. I only paid for, if you convert to Philippine peso, around less than, or around a bit above 400 pesos. So it's really cool. So we have here Brian Aldiss. So usually I see the name of Brian Aldiss in like anthology books. So this is a like his some of his short fiction. So it's nice. I don't think I've read anything from here, or if I have, I can't remember. But basically, this one is like a collection of his like two, four, six, eight short stories. So that's nice right there. Another sci-fi author that is well renowned, Henry Kuttner, but I don't think I've read anything from him yet. So this is another collection of his containing 14 short stories. Unfortunately, this is only volume 2. So of course it's a second-hand bin, so I can't like, where's volume 1? So you have to be like lucky, So at least I got the volume 2, so that's fine. This I already have a copy in the Philippines, 13 French science fiction stories, but that one is a bit butchered, so this one looks a bit better, so I have an extra copy. Again, I love science fiction from like different cultures, because usually a lot of sci-fis are, Western in the US, so there are a lot of science fiction anthologies that are written by Japanese, by Chinese, by Spanish, by Russians, in here by French, so yeah, you get to see. In fact, there's also like an anthology like in the Philippines, for Filipinos. So you get to see how the technology advancement affects the different cultures around the world. So it's nice to have that. I have here another. This one is a quartet, four short stories, but a bit longer, maybe novellas. And one of these things I've already read. Robert Heinlein, of course. One of my favorite science fiction short story is his All You Zombies. And here he wrote a thing called the Roads Must Roll. This one I already read in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1. So this is a very good story. So like I said, he only tweaked one thing, one thing that we don't have today. Basically, in The Roads Must Roll, the society is living in a city where the roads are, so there are no vehicles, but the roads are moving like insanely fast. And so basically, like you just like that, and then like what that sounds boring, but here, man, like Robert Heinlein, explains what are the sociological impacts of that, to the labor union, to the workers doing those roads, to the people living nearby. It's very fascinating. And since I love that short story, I would assume that the other three here, which I haven't read any of them yet, would be of the same ilk, of the same quality. So I'm so excited to read this. It's called Tomorrow Times Four, a stellar quartet. Okay, so that's nice. The year's best science fiction. So, like I mentioned here, Brian Aldiss is one of the editor here, and of course the renowned Harry Harrison. I also have an anthology of his back in the Philippines. But yeah, this is a year's best science fiction, number 7. So, what year is this? 1975. So I love the best. There are a lot of these, even until now, they're still ongoing, edited by some other people. For example, the recent one I'm reading is, I think, edited by Neil Clark, but this one is like in the 1970s, so you get to appreciate like what they considered like the best fiction. So in fact, this is 1973, of that time, in 1973. So that's number 7. And finally, I also got the year's best fiction, number 8. This is for the year, so presumably this is 1974, because this is number 8. This one is number 7, and this is 1973. So you have here, famous authors like Alfred Bester, James Tiptree Jr., and so on. The other one, it has like Thomas Ditch, Robert Silverberg, Lafferty, Gene Wolfe, and all others. Okay, very cool. So I maybe I'm gonna be reading this first. It's thinner. Okay, and I really love short fiction, because they finish very short and stuff. But yeah, maybe I'll get back to my, some of my other YouTube, in my channel. I also do review of short stories. Maybe I'll get back to that, because right now I'm still so immersed in Worm. I'm almost done with that. This one is a web serial. I've mentioned it before, but I'm still so immersed into it. So, but I don't know if I get to read a story from here. This one, maybe I'm gonna review it in this channel. But yeah, all these things I got for like less than 400 pesos. And then they really smell good. The only thing that one of the things that I missed in South Africa is, if you go to their like sort of equivalent of their national bookstore, I look for their a plastic cover. Their plastic cover is weird for books, because it's the one that you stick permanently on the book. You literally have a plastic that will cover your book, but it will stick on the cover page. I really hate that, because it doesn't give you the option to replace it in the future, because that will be a pain to remove. Like when you remove it, the cover will also be ripped off. I like the plastic covers in the national bookstore in the Philippines, where it's like a literal plastic and then you get to cover it yourself. So I prefer those. But anyway, yeah, these are the books I got. But yeah, let's go to Postdoc Chronicles quickly. So last week I mentioned that my crash hard drive, I think I was able to recover it, and fortunately I did right now. So right now I'm running a new analysis on the QCD background, the multi-jets background that we have. So basically, I think the problem is the wiring of the hard drive to the motherboard is a bit loose. So what I did is I opened the back, I removed the hard drive, I blew on it and stuff, and then I made sure that it's stuck in there. And so when I turned it on, everything went fine. So I believe it's just as simple as the connection getting loose or getting dusty or something like that. But yeah, that's it right there. And also, we are now tackling one by one. We are now addressing the referee's comments. So hopefully, within this month, within August, we can send back the paper. We can send back the reply to the referee, so that eventually it will get published. Because my supervisors, Jong and Deepak, they're really confident that the outlook, the report is very positive. Only that he has, like, again, like I said before, a few issues in how we presented our data. So specifically, he wanted, for example, a plot of the change in the cross section of our signal as the squark masses varies. Okay, but Jong said, we just mentioned the numbers. We don't need to put a plot in there, because the paper is gonna be long and it's just a letter. It should be a letter format, so it should be relatively short. Okay, and then he also has this comment about regarding our exclusion figure. I forgot to do this. It's my fault. We forgot to mention what the colors mean. Which are excluded, which are included, and stuff. So I addressed that. And then he had this question, a very nice question regarding the how sure are we that the neutralino is boosted, because our signature relies on a fat jet having a photon inside. So he said, okay, so that only happens when the neutralino is boosted. But how can you be sure? We did not show any plots that highlight our claim. So both Jong and Deepak thinks that we should address that. We should add a plot. So initially I was thinking plotting the delta R, of the photon and the fat jet, so that we should see that in that delta R, we should see that majority of the photons will be inside if the delta R between the jet and the photon is less than 1. So in that distribution plot, you would see that the less than 1 area of the histogram would be populated. So I wanted that, but Jong had a better suggestion. He said, I think the best way would be to create instead a 2D plot where the y-axis is the delta R of the photon and the fat jet, and then the x-axis is the fat jet, the momentum of the leading mass fat jet. So that way we can see the correlation between the delta R when the photons are inside, and whether the fat jet is boosted. So when you say boosted, meaning it's moving very fast, essentially. Okay, it has like a huge gamma beta. But anyway, yeah. So we did that. So the referee wanted the neutralino, but basically you don't see the neutralino. All you see are its decay products. So we look at the decay products within a fat jet, and then we look at the PT distribution of the fat jet, and indeed it is boosted, because every time it has a high value of a momentum, okay, the PT of the leading fat jet, then the photons are also populated in the area where the delta R is less than 1. So basically, if you can imagine, it's really, even Jong said, like it should be easy to see that it should be boosted, because if you can imagine when the neutralino is at rest, so and then it emits a photon and the other decay products, these decay products would be back to back, to conserve momentum, because the initial momentum of neutralino is equal to zero. However, the moment you boost the neutralino, the moment it moves, then you can imagine so for example, it moves in this direction, then you can imagine the decay products, instead of being a back to back, they will form a cone. Okay, so as to conserve the momentum along the direction where the neutralino is moving. And so you can imagine, if the neutralino is boosted, it's really moving very fast, and then the photon, the other decay products, will sort of do like that. Okay, so the delta R, basically the separation between them becomes smaller and smaller, and indeed in that 2D plot we were able to show that, so it was nice. And then the subject variables. So in the paper, we mentioned that we tried using the subject variables. They did not help at all. The referee said, yeah, they did not help, but show me some numbers, show me some plots. So we didn't include that. We just said they didn't help. Okay, so we didn't use them. So Deepak said I should show some 2D plots of some of the substructure variables that I did. So basically, I just showed that a particular substructure variable as a function of the Bino mass that we're trying to reconstruct, and show that it is smeared, in that 2D plot. So that means if it is smeared, and then when you use substructure variables, what you do is you usually cut the values of the substructure variables. You only constrain the signals, so that you're only looking at a signal at a specific range of the substructure variables. So, however, since our signal is smeared out in that 2D plane, the moment you cut the substructure variable, then you are excluding some of the other signals. And so Deepak said, so that's bad, because we want our substructure variables to help in our signal over background. So the signal to be greater than the background. We don't want to cut the signal at all. So that's the reason why we never use the substructure in the first place. So I would be including that. So this morning I was doing that, because I was like, early this year, that's the time I was doing the substructure variable stuffs in my old postdoc chronicles. The thing is, when I run the program again today, it's not working. Like, I don't know what's the problem. I run it, and then there are like a lot of errors. Last time I ran it was fine. So maybe I don't know, maybe it's because I'm now using a recent version of the FJ contrib, like how do you call this, it's like an additional, external program that you attach to your fastjet installer. So what I did is I did another clean install of the fatjet, and then put in the jet substructure variables there from the FJ contrib, and now it's running. Okay, so later I'm gonna clean those plots and then include them. And then finally, what else, the referee also wanted us to include the MET plot. Jong said it wouldn't be helpful, because these things were already plotted in a previous paper, and also the MET plot alone wouldn't really help, because the small mass between the synglino and the singlet basically guarantees a small MET. So Jong said a nicer way would be to plot the MET of our signal, the stealth SUSY signal, versus the MET of a typical SUSY scenario that does not use stealth. But these have already been plotted in some previous references, so we will just gonna reference those. And then another thing, the referee wanted a sensitivity plot of various squark masses. So we are doing that, but I think we're still gonna defend the idea that looking at like two benchmarks should be fine. So I'm still thinking how I'm going to arrange that. But yeah, most of it, the referee's remarks are like doable right now. So I haven't hit any hitches yet. And then after I've incorporated all these comments, and then a draft of the reply to the referee, I'll send them again to Jong and Deepak. So I sent something like last night. Jong and Deepak said these are fine. So the only things that I haven't done yet are, again, the substructure part, and of course I forgot to mention the background. So the referee would like to see exact cut flow of our background, because we claim that the some of the backgrounds that we look at, like Z plus photon, W plus photon, TT bar and stuff, they are negligible. So the referee wants a cut flow. So I'm doing that right now on my multi-jet. So in the cut flow, we will see exactly what happens to our signal and our background every time we introduce our three main cuts. So you can see that when the entire backgrounds die, and then when the only our signal survives. So I'm doing that as well. But anyway, yeah, this has been a long postdoc chronicles, but this is, yeah, Postdoc Chronicles week number 61. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. So I'm gonna go back to school, but maybe I don't know. I'm gonna read one of these first, and then drink some water before I go back in the afternoon. But anyway, thanks for watching again. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.